Hello, and welcome to Health Fitness Redefined. I'm your host, Anthony Amen. Join me today as we take a dive into health fitness, where we learn how to overcome adversity to pick back to our position and see health and fitness in a whole new light. Today we have a meeting of the Anthonys, which is what we officially decided to call this episode. But no, seriously, we have a great guest on today. His name is also Dr. Anthony, but we want to talk about something that we had on a couple shows already, and I think it's an important topic, and that's what the heck do I do when I'm a father and I have a million other things going on in my life, and how do I take care of me? And besides that, why should I care about taking care of myself? But without further ado, just kind of tell us a little bit about how you got started into this health and wellness field.
Anthony, it's great to be here. And I got into health and fitness basically because I was born in Syracuse, New York, and I grew up on the East Coast, a mix of there and Toronto, Canada. And I had a relatively normal childhood, loved playing outside, going to school. I have a younger brother. But what was unique about my childhood is I watched my own dad and his health basically deteriorate through my early childhood. I watched him bust his butt to provide for the family. His health was on the back burner. And he eventually got a cancer diagnosis when he was quite young, and he died when he was just 42 years old. I was 9 years old at the time when that happened, and it was devastating to see like my dad, the man I love so much, my superhero in many ways, lose his health, his vitality. And it obviously was so painful for me to have to heal from that and to see the impact on my mom and my little brother. The silver lining was I was kind of blessed to learn one of life's powerful lessons, and that's that health is at the foundation of so many things that we love, our ability to provide. And it's so easy to let health get on the back burner because we think we have so many priorities, our family, the things we're doing. And that's basically what happened to my dad. And it inspired me to study fitness personally so I can build my body up and become strong and healthy. And then as I progressed, I saw so many people like my dad. It wasn't always a cancer diagnosis, but it was effectively, couldn't manage a health routine that was sustainable amidst the pressures of family, work, hobbies, and all this stuff. So I wanted to find a way to help busy dads be able to make this sustainable. And that's why I started the Fit Father Project. We've been doing it for around 10 years now. And we also started the Fit Mother Project around 5 years ago. And we've had close to 100,000 people go through our programs in over 100 countries and see them transform their lives. So it's kind of because of the memory of my dad, but now it's just so much bigger because I believe in today's society, we have so many sick parents. And it's just because the current culture makes it really easy to eat unhealthy, to not prioritize your health. And I want to help do something to fix that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways we can take this because obviously we're both in this field and get an understanding. But I think the simplest direction is, and I know you said you started working with mothers, but I kind of want to say specifically with dads.
Yeah.
Is I feel like men as a whole were kind of left out for many years when it comes to health and fitness. What's your reaction to that? Did you see that it was harder to convince guys to get involved as far as instead of females?
Yeah, well, I think we have if we look at mainstream health and fitness culture over the last 15, 20 years, it was largely driven by like the diet books or the doctors that have certain kind of methodology. And a lot of that is geared towards women. And that's just like the facts. And I think a lot of guys, the stories are all unique, but many guys were athletic when they were younger or played some sports. And then, as they got into the workforce, had kids, they stopped the physical activity, and then the stress comes on, and then you start to eat unhealthy foods, and then you pick up a few bad habits. And then, you wake up 10, 15 years later and you're just like, you're overweight. And the problem is that most of your friends are too. And it just kind of became very normalized. And I think we've kind of had the concept of like the dad bod that kind of was like a funny phrase that got coined, let's just say 5 years ago or so. But the truth is that, guys, it wasn't like trendy or there wasn't like pressure for guys to get healthy. But now I think we're kind of at a critical tipping point where we see that the diabetes, the obesity, the heart disease, the erectile dysfunction, the dementia, and also if you still have parents that are alive, your aging parents, you're seeing that a lot of them are falling apart and it's not looking so good. So I think we're getting like a cultural wake up call for men right now that the belly is not just like, acute. It's really like visceral fat. It's damaging, and we need to do something to make it better.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing I kind of leave as a takeaway for men that we see is they don't realize that men are more likely to have heart attacks because of that visceral fat you're talking about in their guts. It's just an unfortunate thing that our genetics say that, hey, we're predispositioned to growing visceral fat inside of our guts to put all that pressure up onto our heart.
Yeah,
I mean, ultimately, it's going to lead to issues. What do you think if I'm someone listening to this show, right? What do you think the number one red flag that I should look for when I'm like, oh my God, I need to get my life together? Is there anything in particular that sticks out?
for sure. I mean, the fact that I'd say like I'd say probably that you feel winded all the time and you have very low levels of energy. Like as we get older, like our energy is going to be directly proportional to how healthy we are at a cellular level. Like inside each of our cells, we have these mitochondria, and they're just so essential. When we exercise or we eat food, the mitochondria are the end sites of metabolism. And as we age, and if we're lazy or inactive, and those mitochondria get dysfunctional, and when they get dysfunctional, our risk for cancer goes up massively. Our immune system gets worse. And I think if guys feel like they just get winded really easily, you know, going upstairs, playing with their kids or grandkids, and they realize they just don't have any stamina, that's just a byproduct of mitochondrial dysfunction. Cardiovascular fitness is in the tank. And then coupled with that kind of like heart circulatory metabolic picture is like all the erectile issues that happen too. Like if you realize that you're no longer having morning wood or you're having these kinds of things, which like most guys probably aren't, it's another symptom that your heart is not working well. And what's the main killers of men over 40? Heart disease, cancer, and now we're getting up there to like these metabolic conditions like diabetes, pre-diabetes. So, I mean, the energy levels, if the energy levels are tanked, you're not sleeping well, you're stressed, and you're getting winded easily, like we need to make some changes on a fundamental level.
I love that you went straight out and just said erectile dysfunction. There it is. Like that goes a long way because a lot of guys won't even talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like your heart, right? It's the extension of your
Yeah.
heart. Like this organ gets engorged with blood, and if your blood is unhealthy, it's too thick. You know, you're not getting good nitric oxide levels from exercise and diet. Like symptoms are gonna show up in every organ system, but it's all connected. It's one underlying process, and it's not as simple as just taking a blood pressure medication or a statin for your cholesterol levels. Like those things are band-aids, and everyone's on them, and it's not fixing the root cause. The root cause can only be fixed by every individual man starting to get like serious about why this actually matters and then starting to do the foundational lifestyle stuff to start to turn it around. And I'll say this, it's not easy, but it's possible. Like after 40, we've had guys who've been out of shape for like decades that can get into the best shape of their lives. And it requires effort, 100%. So behind the effort, you need to have a really deep motivational connection to why this is important. And it's typically deeper than just, oh, I want to have less of a belly, so I wear smaller pants, or I don't look as fat on family vacation pictures or stuff like that. You have to really connect to your why in this motivational framework. And that's why we're the Fit Father Project, not like Fit Man Project. For a lot of guys, it comes down to like legacy and family and tying our decisions between what we put in our mouth and how that's affecting our job, our family, our kids, our sense of spiritual identity and wholeness. Like if we can start to really understand that this stuff is deeper than just health and fitness is a category of our life and like this is everything, then we have more motivation.
Yeah, and you kind of nailed it. It's for guys, it's more the legacy we're leaving to our kids. So what do you think that portrays to your child if you don't take care of yourself?
Well, it's normalcy, right? I mean, I think the thing is like every successive generation just grows up with the culture that the previous generation had. And sometimes they revolt against that, but sometimes they just think it's normal. And like, this is the first generation of kids we have now that literally have childhood obesity and diabetes. Like we have literally type 2 diabetic kids now in a high proportion. Like if you went around any kind of shopping mall or, you know, let alone a water park, you're going to see a lot of overweight kids. And those overweight kids typically have overweight parents because the food that's being fed at home ends up being normalized. And these are going to be our adults. And I'll tell you this, if kids are carrying around a lot of weight at a very young age, they have dysregulated blood sugars, they're on the technology, they're not sleeping well, and all this is normalized, the kids are not going to express to the greatest capacity that they could. They're going to be dumber. They're going to have more mood issues, more sleep issues, more confidence issues. And then that's going to get passed down to subsequent generations. And I'm not saying we necessarily need to all be carrying around this burden of like the human species and our fitness around our backs. You know, we're thinking about our own individual families, but the truth is we're constantly propagating culture to the next generation. And right now we probably have the first time where we have a legitimately weaker generation of humans that are just not as fit and healthy. Like if you looked at a gym class in the 1960s, like they would smoke any of the kids today by like 100-fold. It's nuts. And it's just true.
It's a sad, funny true because it's like your examples. The funny you think about it, but it's sad. It's like you look at what you're seeing now out there. And we did a huge episode on childhood obesity, but it's just getting worse year by year. And I want to pin this right back to kind of you working with fathers. You
Mm-hmm.
can't get on your kid's case about eating healthy, working out, taking care of themselves, if you're not doing it
For
yourself.
sure.
Kids
Yeah.
lead by example. They want to see what I'm going to do, what my parents are doing. I love my parents. They know what's best for me. So I'm just going to mimic them. If you're eating shit, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're talking about how stressed you are all day,
Yeah.
I'm going to pull over to your kids.
You're so right. And I'll say it's never too late. And this the cool thing is if right now you're at a state where you know your health could be a lot better and so could your kids' health be a lot better, then they have the opportunity to see you go through your hero's journey. Your hero's journey of losing the weight, man. It is powerful when I hear stories all the time where a dad loses 50 pounds and then his kids are like, start exercising or want to start flexing their little muscles or want to start eating healthier too, because they see their dad go from like a place where he was kind of like weak or not fully expressed and move into something hard. I mean, what a life lesson you can teach your kids, and they will follow your example and they see how much more vital you are and that you've made changes in habits. You're literally imprinting on them the fact that no matter what happens in your life, if you're not happy with something, you can make changes if you're willing to put in the work and get a proper plan.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I guess the next actionable question is, what's the first step? How do
Yeah.
I know as a father, like, hey, there's a million things I can do. Our industry changes literally every second. So where do I start? I'm overwhelmed. What's the answer?
Sure. Well, I'm a foundations guy, and I believe that the answers to get healthy are like stuff that most people know, like eating a more whole foods, high protein, carb controlled diet, moving your body very frequently every single day with walking, sprinkling in high intensity exercise, prioritizing sleep and hydration, and the art of that is what's really important. Like how to make that sustainable, how to fit that into a routine that doesn't have a lot of friction in your life, and we can get into that. In our program, though, before we give people meal plans and workouts, the first thing that we do is we help guys connect deeply to their motivation, because this is a game of behaviors. And behaviors are not just logic. They're logic, they're emotion, there's neuroassociations, what's in between our two ears here, this brain, and all the patterns that we have. We need to start to rewire our thinking. So we run guys through a process of creating what we call a mission statement, where they do some deep journaling and reflection to basically lay out like what they actually care about in their lives. Like, what are your core values? And how does your health and your current behaviors connect to all of those, either in a positive or a negative way? We're starting to create some new neuroassociations and psychological leverage. And the end goal of this process is to come up with a concrete mission statement about why your health is important and why you understand that there's going to be costs and energy you need to invest, but that it's worth it. And now we're getting like a motive power, because 2-3 weeks from now, when work gets stressful or something happens with your family, like the willpower is going to fade a little bit, but you have to have something to come back to that's deeper than I'm just following another diet kick. Because if you just have these superficial diet kicks and you keep on failing, you're creating a neuroassociation of failure. You're creating neuroassociations of this doesn't work for me long term. So this has to be a much deeper process than just scratching the surface all the time. So the emotional stuff is actually where people start. And then the next aspect of that is actually nailing a daily nutrition regimen. Because the cool thing about dads is like fitness and the workouts, we also think we need to do that. If we want to get fit, we got to go work out. And obviously fitness is important. There's kinds of workouts that are effective, but nutrition's like 75% of the game when it comes to weight loss. So if we can just get the emotion right and then have a daily nutrition plan that we're going to follow, it makes it life easier. And here's the cool thing about nutrition. It's not like you have to add anything in. You're already eating. Let's just get better in slot menu items. That's going to give you more energy, allow you to be productive, and ideally save you some time when it's really turnkey. And then you start to feel better. And when you feel better, it's more motivating to exercise. So there's kind of like a order of importance. And most guys have it totally wrong, right? They like think they need to go jump to the workouts. They don't nail the nutrition. They don't get deep enough into their why. And then they start to flounder and then they fall off track and then repeat the cycle.
Yeah, I mean, you went through a whole plethora of things there. So I'm just going to come back to the first thing you said, is nailing in your why.
Yeah.
And a really good example of this is we're entrepreneurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we both in that health and fitness realm. We didn't get into this field to be super wealthy. That wasn't either of us wise. Knowing you now, I can clearly say that. So we got in it for a bigger purpose, which is what drives us to run our business. And that's the same concept as taking care of yourself. What is your deeper purpose? I don't want to hear a bland, I want to lose weight, I want to look better on the beach. It's never the answer. It's, wow, my kids like went for a walk and I died and it was embarrassing. Like, I don't want to go through that embarrassing moment.
For sure.
Wow, my child wanted to go on a roller coaster and I was too big for the ride. Little things like that are so much deeper and help you so much more. And with those mission statements, I guess the question is, can assume the answer.
Mhm.
Do they put those up where they can see it every day?
Heck yeah. I mean, this is where
Awesome.
to recreate our neuroassociations, we need to like recreate our environment, which is an extension of like what we're thinking and how we're feeling and ultimately how we're living. So we have guys print this mission statement out, read it, revisit it, put it in their actual physical space so they can see it as a constant drip and reminder of like, oh, this is why I do this. And the key thing is that moment when it's like 9 o'clock at night that you have that habit of you used to have a couple cookies before going to bed. And now because your mission statement was in your room and it's in your bathroom and you look at that cookie and you're like, actually, this is a deeper moment than just whether or not I should have a cookie. This is like me choosing, am I going to get on the old habits and path or I'm going to follow something that's in my higher alignment? And I'll say this too. I don't know, like every person has their own unique experience with spirituality, with God. I'll speak for me personally. Like the integrity of having a healthy body paired with a healthy mind, paired with service is like so important. Like I just know I can't be my best if I'm not feeling whole and aligned. And if your body is out of alignment, you are just leaving on the table energy, performance, fulfillment. And so for me, it's like the cookie's more than a cookie. It's like, man, do I want to walk that path or this path? So this is where I think it even becomes like deeper and it's about wholeness and it's about walking intuitively the path that we all know. We want to be, healthier. We want to be fully expressed. So creating more weight around those decisions is what starts to recreate these neuro associations. And then the good news is it gets easier over time. Like Anthony, it doesn't take much willpower for you to like stay on your healthy routines now. Like you've been doing it forever. You help so many people do it. But I'm sure at first there's like a building process. So even people understanding the trajectory of it, kind of like learning a language, like there's a hard period. You got to learn the vocabulary. You got to learn the basic vowels and sounds. And then your first couple words. Well, it's very similar with health and fitness. Like there's an early stage that requires quite a bit of effort, a lot of inertia. But once you get things going and you're actually getting like a lot of rewards, both in terms of energy and vitality, but also like it starts to get motivating intrinsically, then it gets a lot easier. And now you're just doing small course corrections as opposed to like all this tremendous energy, but it requires tremendous energy off the front end of this. And this is why having a structured program to follow and typically paired with either a coach or a community to help you focus that energy is the key. Most guys have the whole man thing like, oh, I'll just do it on my own, or I know what to do, or I used to do bench press 3 sets when I was there. I'll just do that and just not eat carbs. And like, if you're struggling and you've continued to try to make your own plan, like just get help from people, with a little humility who like kind of figure this out and get in community. And I think that's what really I've seen the best results come from.
Yeah, and I just want to, like I said, we're going a lot, and this is great information, but I really want to dial in on just a couple of quick things. My first question, thinking of a typical guy response, is why would I write a mission statement? That's corny. How do you get past that?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think ultimately, like, change, like true change that I've experienced in my life and that I've seen with other guys has a certain seed of humility in it. It's like when we drop our pride enough to get to a point where we become open again, like the kind of beginner's mindset to willing to try something new. If we're operating from like a particular point in time and space, we can only really see based on our perspective. And ultimately, guys listening to this, if you think it's corny, like that at the back of all of your decisions, the conscious and the unconscious ones, is some kind of emotion, some kind of emotive force. The things that drove you into your greatest success in any area of your life, whether you're a former athlete, someone in business, there was emotion behind that. So how are you not going to harness this emotive capacity that you have with your health and fitness and get really clear with it? Like you're basically leaving it on the table. And then there's just the straight research. Like the Harvard goal study is fascinating. They studied a bunch of Harvard graduates and they compared them in terms of their quote unquote success, which they largely measured and how much money people were making, 10 years after graduation. And the biggest determinant that they saw was people who had written goals succeeded far more. All these people from Harvard, they're all brilliant. They all have the characteristics.
My goals, and I'm sure yours are, right there.
For sure, right? So like, let's write your goals and then pin emotion to it. Like feeling plus action on a consistent basis is what's really helps us transform and gives us this power. So like, if you think it's corny and you've been failing, maybe it's time to be a little more humble and try something new.
Yeah, and I really, really couldn't agree more. And I want to continue this conversation, but first I have to give a quick shout out to our new sponsor, F2 Consulting. So if you guys want to get ahead, we talked about talking to consultants, having people follow you along the journey. F2 Consulting is a brand new company that myself and a buddy of mine, Keith, launched. We saw a lot of consultants out there helping with fitness, helping with finance. No one put them together. So we have started a brand new company where you're going to get both of us every week. We're going to sit down, dive into your health and fitness. We're going to make sure we keep you on track, keep you accountable. On top of that, we're going to go through goal setting. We're going to go through motivation. Keith's going to take you to debt consolidation, bring out what the heck is a 401k and why do I want that? Little things like that that we just take for granted, especially for our entrepreneurs out there that are running a business of no time to take care of themselves. So if you guys are interested in learning more, check us out at fitbodiesfatwallets.com. Again, that's fitbodiesfatwallets.com. Thank you, F2 Consulting, and we're going right back. So Anthony, one thing you mentioned just clearly was that stood out is the nutrition component of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about setting up a plan. It's whole grains. It's watching what you're eating in the sense of us like simple carbs, complex carbs. What's the first thing, right? Because food gets overwhelming, and a lot of people, and I'm sure you get this too. I know how to eat. I know what's junk food, and they have no freaking idea. So, what's a simple answer? Something really digestible where I can say lettuce good, cookie bad. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that one of the mistakes people make is they focus too much on foods as opposed to the overall structure of a plan. And I'd like to basically run you through a day of like Fit Father style healthy eating to kind of go into what the best in slot items are. And right before I do that, I basically want to help people understand the seed of this idea that the quality of your nutrition ultimately determines your energy. And this terms in terms of how stable your blood sugar is, how much energy you have. And let's take it from a financial perspective. Like right now, if your nutrition's not on point, you're probably losing it like generously 1 to 3 hours per day in terms of just brain fog, feeling tired after meals, or even just trying to figure out what to eat in general. And like that's costing you money. That's costing you mental bandwidth. And like on the flip side, if you have a dialed in nutrition plan, you could be cruising every day. You have clarity. It helps you feel better. You don't need to think about it as much. So winning the day with nutrition and the structure is so important. First thing you do, you wake up in the morning, the body needs water. Rehydration is the key. All of our cells made up with water. The inside of every cell has cytoplasm made up of water. We need to get water straight in the body. And this is 20 to 32 ounces in the morning. And this is powerful, not just from like a physiologic basis of getting hydration, but it's also like a little bit of a ritual where you're affirming every single morning, boom, I'm starting this day with something that is good for me. And then maybe if you want to even get better from that, you can take a little walk, do some push-ups or squats, get the body moving a little bit, maybe get some sunshine on your skin and your eyes. But either way, the water is first thing in the morning. Second thing we help people do is basically figure out when they're going to eat. Just like how the body is set up on structure, the muscles hang from bones that provide structure for how it moves. Your nutrition structure is more important than the foods. And this means making it proactive and deciding the meal timing that works best for you, which Anthony, yours might be different than mine based on my family and schedule demands. We give guys a couple different meal timing schedule setups and they pick those. So there's a classic like breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner. That works. There's another one where you could do some intermittent fasting and skip that first meal. That works. You can do different stuff. If let's say your schedule's wonky on some days, you might be a firefighter, EMT, you have a night shift or a third shift. You need to have a nutrition schedule that works really well. For the purpose of demonstrating, we're going to go through a breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner because I think that's like going to be relevant to most guys. Meal number one, breakfast, whenever you do have that, needs to be standardized. This is not a meal you spend a lot of time thinking about. It's ideally something that's quick, convenient, easy to digest. And the foods that typically work well for people are protein smoothies, where you're throwing a bunch of good ingredients in there. It's easy. You can blend it up. It's got lots of good nutrition. Egg-based recipes. So, you can have a bunch of eggs scrambled, sunny side up, whatever, paired with some kind of side of something you like. It could be fruits, it could be veggies, etc. Overnight oatmeal. If you want to go more plant-based, you can make some power oatmeal kind of stuff. But basically,
I just want to stop you for a second because what you're saying is gold, and I just want people to understand this for a second. I wake up in the morning, I don't think about it. I have two options. Oatmeal, which I use a little mixture of that, or eggs. Period. It's never a question. It's one of those two things, and it's solely based on how much energy do I need after breakfast. That's it.
Nice. And
but
you got
keep going, right? But I think it's important.
You have it nailed. You like every fitness professional I've ever met, or someone who's consistent with fitness, professional or not, like has a dialed in meal number one. And it's so important because it helps give you energy in the morning. It keeps you full. You don't need to think about it. And it's a course correction mechanism, because it's not a problem if you like slip up on your healthy eating and you have something for dinner that you shouldn't have. It becomes a problem if that becomes your next week, your next month, your next 5 years. But a consistent meal number one can be that way to continuously reshift momentum if it's ever going off the rails. So dialing that in with not a lot of thinking is great. And plus it works for busy parents too. Like you can whip up a shake in 5 minutes. You can whip up eggs super easy. You can still get those eggs if you're traveling away from at a hotel or somewhere out. You can always find that healthy through line for that meal number one. And so typically having a meal that's higher in protein, higher in healthy fats is very, very good for breakfast, and dial it in. So we give people recipes for meal number one. They decide what that is. Now, a lot of the 90s nutrition advice would have a lot of small meals sprinkled throughout the day. Turns out that's probably not optimal. The more you snack and the more you eat throughout the day, it just dysregulates your blood sugar, constantly up and down and up and down, and actually makes you more hungry. So get snacking out of your life. There's a time for snacks. And I'd say that afternoon snack between a noon lunch and dinner at 6, it's okay to have something at like 3 o'clock, but I'm not talking about the snacking between breakfast and lunch or all the time. That's just going to mess you up. So for lunch, I also believe that some amount of standardization is great. One thing you can do is just, if you've made dinner the night before that was like relatively healthy, some kind of protein, some kind of vegetable, some kind of carb, you can just have leftovers from dinner. So like you overcook on dinner, you always have something for lunch. That's a viable option. Protein on top of greens, so some kind of salad concept, always viable. You can get that anywhere. I mean, you can even get that at fast food restaurants if you were really on the pinch, protein with greens. And then also we're a fan of telling guys, hey, you can have bread, the right kind of carbohydrates. Like if you get a sprouted organic bread or an organic sourdough, you can make a sandwich for lunch, and it's okay. We've had people literally lose hundreds of thousands of pounds eating sandwiches, and it's okay. There's a big difference between having like some non-organic white bread versus a sprouted organic bread with some
Dave's
turkey
killer
with some
Ben.
avocado.
I get nothing for saying that. Great.
Yeah. Right. So good. Some Ezekiel bread sandwiches for lunch. Like that's good. And I think we're always balancing with nutrition, consistency with variety. So I love being consistent in the first 2 meals of the day. Dinner is where we can have a lot more variety. And this is where we can mix and match. As long as you center it around a protein and a vegetable with a reasonable side of healthy carbs, if you want to include that, you're good. So we teach a concept called building a perfect plate, where if you imagine a blank plate of food and you fill half that plate with some kind of fibrous veggie you love, typically green. This could be a salad. This could be asparagus, broccoli, some kind of stir fry, something like that. That's just like a healthy veggie. There's many ways you can prepare it. Even if you don't like vegetables, I know you'll find at least 1 or 2 ways where you can like them, and there's some vegetable you'll like. Then you can pair any protein and any carbohydrate with that and the other quarters of the plate. So half, quarter, quarter, half veggies, quarter protein, quarter carbs. Here are some examples of perfect plates. It could be something like a chicken breast with some avocado, with some sweet potato or squash. It could be some wild salmon, some asparagus, some brown rice. It could be a taco bowl with some ground beef, some quinoa, some fajita veggies. It could even be a vegetarian option. You get some kind of chili with a little bit of side of some quinoa or something like that on there. And so there's so many options. But if you start to think in terms of frameworks for dinner, then you have the freedom of having a wide variety of food. It's not like you're always having the can of tuna and the chicken breast, and it's like soulless nutrition plan, but it's still regimented. And if you build perfect plates, as I described, with those portions, half veggie, quarter protein, quarter carbs, they're almost always 500 to 700 calories. You'd be hard pressed to make them more than that. So you don't have to count the calories, but you're relatively calorie controlled, and your whole family can participate. So maybe the kids have a little bit of mac and cheese as their side, and you skip that and you go higher on the veggies and higher on the protein. Fine. You can still make it work with your family. But if you follow this general framework and you're consistent enough, and I'm not talking about perfect, just good, you will succeed.
Yeah, and that's the biggest key takeaway. Like I'm sure me, like you, I'm not going out to dinner being like, I have to make sure I get 6 grains of pieces of lettuce and a cup of rice. And no, I'm just going to eat inside a generally healthy framework.
Yeah.
And pretty much nailed it on the head. I could get an idea of how much protein I'm eating, get an idea of how much fat I'm eating, get an idea of how many veggies I'm eating. And the 2 key takeaways, and you can add to this if you'd like, is protein, fiber. You track those, you're good.
Yep, totally.
Period.
And if you go to a restaurant, you're always going to look for the protein that you want to have, and the fiber, they'll just throw a healthy vegetable. There's always the default healthy meal. Sometimes it's a salmon, sometimes it's the chicken. Like the restaurant will throw you a bone. There's always something to have. And then at home, you're just building it around what kind of protein does your family want that day? And then how do you fill it in with some kind of veggie? And if you do that, you can have a lot of delicious meals, you can have a lot of freedom, and then you have your nutrition. Again, nutrition is probably 75 to 80% of the game. We've had people lose 100 pounds, dads lose 100 pounds just walking, no formal workouts, and eating healthy. Now, if you do formal exercise, it speeds things up. The fitness can be very good for muscle mass, for hormonal profiles, for anti-aging benefits. But the baseline is, even if you're just so busy flat out and you don't have time to actually like formally work out, if you just eat right, it's going to give you more energy. You start take some walks during the day, and you do that, you're going to be on a good track.
I couldn't agree more. Just kind of get yourself together, focus on what you're eating, focus on your little day-to-day activities. Go for a walk with the family in the morning or at night.
Yep.
Make things family activities, these
Yep.
things we talk about all the time. Don't do this alone. Do this with the people to help
Yep.
keep that accountability component. I do want to talk about two more quick points.
Sure.
Something you mentioned like 15 minutes ago, but I'm going to go back to it. You talked about looking at a cookie and saying it's so much more than that cookie, like them eating at that moment. And the first thing that popped into my head is delayed gratification.
Sure.
You're teaching somebody an essence of a cookie. I'm not going to have that instant gratification right now with the sweet, because ultimately that's not going to get me where I want to go to feel healthier, to live longer, to be there more for our kids. It builds so much more. That simple decision plays in every concept of your life. You start learning little things like, okay, maybe financial, right? So I'm going to put $1 into stock. I mean, I know that's nothing, but just as my example, and it's going to build 8% over time.
Yep.
You start learning little things go a long way. So it's more than just, I'm going to have that cookie today. It's let's look towards the future and not towards today.
Yeah. And I'll add to that. I think that for sure, that's absolutely true. And I think it's important to use both pleasure and pain. These are two wires that work in the brain. So pleasure would be like, this could be the future that I want to experience. And how amazing would that be if I had a body that I loved, if my family was healthy too. But it's important to use the pain lever too. So like, especially when you're doing that mission statement in journaling, being like, if I don't make some changes, where am I going to end up? Where have I seen my parents or my friends' parents end up? Like, what does it look like when I'm 60, 70 if I continue on this path and don't make changes? How does it affect me? So that when you look at that cookie, you're also looking from the eyes of, damn, like that cookie's leading me down that path. And that's heavier. And that's not to say that you're never going to have the cookie. It might be a cookie, and that is okay, because you wake up the next day, you hydrate, you have your consistent meal one, get back on track. That being said, it's like getting the pain and really understanding these decisions are more consequential than just like, this is just calories or how here. It's like a deeper relationship to your choices and to your future. Like that weight really helps guys a ton.
Yeah. And I just want to ask one last fun question before I give you more of a wrap up. But you talked about digging into that pain. So this is a personal question for you. When you're working out, do you have the positive thoughts in your head where it's, hey, I'm doing this so I look good, blah, blah, blah? Or do you get a lot of the pain points that are sprouting into your head that really drive you to push more?
Well, I mean, I think it's been a different answer at different stages of my life. At this stage in my life, it's a positive, like I'm here just to like keep my body aligned and in good tip top shape. When I was like getting into fitness, especially after my dad died, you best believe I was fueled by a lot of pain. And that pain can be very motivating, especially, and you can use that pain in your early stages. If you're not happy with how you've been in the past, if you're not happy with that weak part of you. I mean, you look at a guy like a David Goggins, who's been very popular out there. Like the guy is driven by a lot of pain of the man he used to be. He doesn't want to go back there, pain of the weakness, pain of other people. So pain can be channeled and used. At a certain point, though, I believe that the pain can and does be left behind if you have healed the old wounds. The pain is coming from a wound, and wounds aren't bad. They're a reminder that some damage has been done and there's healing that is taking place. So use that while you have it. After a certain point, though, at least for me right now on my stage, I'm driven more by the happy thoughts. But I actually think it's kind of become a little more spiritual for me now too. It's like the fitness is a part of like my walk with God and being aligned. So like I'm getting outside, and it's like, it's now like not just positive, like personally, it's positive, like in a bigger lens. So I've made it like bigger than just fitness. It's like the way of living in accordance with natural law and showing up as a leader. So like there's a lot of different psychological levers that I've inherited, but most of our guys who are starting off are using some kind of pain, and use that to fuel you. Put on the kind of music that gets you really dialed in. Look at the man that you are or you used to be and the demand that you want to be, and use that to fuel you. That fuel can be very, very helpful. And at a certain time, it'll fade away when it's no longer serving you.
Yeah, absolutely great answer. So I usually ask my guest at this point to summarize this episode in 1 or 2 sentences, but I want to give you a different question. I want you to say, give me a statement that you can give to dads listening to this right now that haven't started or are thinking about starting. What can be that this is what I need to tell you and speak to them directly?
Dads listening to this who haven't started, like, I want you to take this episode and the fact that if you're literally still listening to this right now, there is something inside of you that is calling you towards this message, because you know inside of you there's something that is not aligned and that you do truly want more. Like, if you are actually listening to this now, then you want something different. And I want you to tap into that and get really deep into that and feel that and know that, it's not going to happen overnight when you make this change. You didn't get unhealthy overnight. It took a decade. It took 2 decades. So it's going to be a journey to get it back. But I need you to connect inside of yourself to understand why this is worth it, why it's worth it for you, why it's worth it for your job, why it's worth it for your kids, why it's worth it for our culture, why it's worth it for your walk with your spirituality. Connect so deep with that why. And then once you have all that energy stirred up, just like how the sun has all this energy, it needs to be focused with a magnifying glass. A program, a coach, a consultant is that magnifying glass. If you're listening to this podcast, you're someone who certainly understands, at least on a subconscious level, that investing in learning is key, and getting insight from other people who figure out stuff is key. And the best thing I could recommend is you get plugged into a structured program where you can just follow along and like basically be the athlete. Like Michael Jordan, great shooter. He had a shooting coach. Kobe Bryant, great shooter. He had a shooting coach too. It's like these guys get help and they get structure from other people because you can really help laser focus the energy. So build the energy and then focus it within the context of a plan. That's what's going to help you succeed and get traction.
That was awesome. And then the second question, how can people find you, get a hold of you?
So fitfatherproject.com, just exactly as it sounds, fitfatherproject.com is our website where you can get our free meal plan, see our paid programs, supplements, and stuff like that. And then YouTube is another really good place to check us out. We have an awesome YouTube channel, over 500 videos. Many of them are very, very good. And I deep dive into nutrition, different kinds of workouts you can follow, obviously some motivation, supplementation. So if you type in Fit Father Project on YouTube, you can have an amazing journey. Like we've had people lose 50 plus pounds just following the free stuff on YouTube. So check us out, subscribe there. And I'm grateful for everyone I've been able to touch today with this message. And certainly to you, Anthony, for providing the platform for this type of conversation, being a champion for so many guys.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for coming on, and thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of Health Fitness Redefined. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button and join us next week as we dive deeper into this ever-changing field. And remember, fitness is medicine. Until next time. For us, we know what it's like to feel unhealthy, depressed, and downright defeated. We want to show others there is a right way, and through fitness, you can do anything you set your mind to. Fitness can give you that motivation, confidence, energy you need to bridge that mental gap and prevent you from missing important life events. We understand it's about feeling better, living longer, and being good examples for our kids. We understand this because we live it. And for us, that's the redefined difference.